What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's video, reacting to why guitar players start using amp modelers and stop using tube amps by Mike Cole. So what's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be reacting to why guitar players start using amp modelers and stop using tube amps by Mike Cole. Please go ahead and go over to Mike Cole's channel and give him a sub, another fantastic guitar YouTuber. Also, I put the link for the original video in the description. Please go to the original video and give that video a like as well. And on this video, please leave a comment on whatever you'd like to see me react to next. All right, now let's get her going.
Okay, so this is called an amp profiler. And this is called an amp modeler. And this is an actual tube amp.
I wonder if he's gonna, part of the video is he's gonna get us to guess, which part of this intro jam was a modeler, which was the profiler, and which was the tube amp. I wonder. We'll find out. News at 11.
So I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully quantify the sheer amount of changes that have happened in the guitar world over the last 15 to 20 years. Like when you look at just digital amp recording solutions or alternatives to an actual tube amp, they've come so far, and I've even done experiments by myself where I've thought to myself, listening back to an amp and an amp modeler, I can barely tell the difference depending on the scenario. And that gets me to an even deeper rabbit hole, because I think when we ask ourselves the big question, we often think it's going to be analog versus digital, but more recently I've been thinking to myself, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. Because there's so many options, I kind of think the big question that every guitar player will have to answer for themselves in the future will be, are you into amp modelers, are you into amp profilers, or are you into actual amps? And starting with the actual profilers, it's one of those interesting things where 6 months ago, yeah, and I know that's late because I've been playing guitar for 8 years, I had never really known what the term profiler meant. You see, I'd heard about the legendary Kempers, and I knew a bunch of professional guitar players, and they all said, every single one of them, all the time, I use a Kemper when I go on the road. And I thought that was cool because I thought that a Kemper was just this really cool amp modeler unit that gave you some crazy presets that people were able to get really, really close to an actual amp, and sometimes even be more effective depending on the scenario. But when I started looking into what actual profiling was and knowing that you can actually capture the sound of each individual amp and then bring it on the road with you, I realized that the possibilities kind of became endless. Like, what
the advent of profiling, when you really think about it, it's the same idea as when CD burners first came out. Yeah, the exact same thing as when CD burners first came out. I can remember, I'm old enough. I remember it before CD burners. I remember when you would make tapes of things. You would, record things with a tape. But when you did that, there was a loss of audio quality. As soon as CD burners became a thing, well, it's digital. It's reading digital. If you take a CD and you burn it from one to the next, there's no degradation in the quality. So now with profiling, I'm almost guessing it's going to be the same kind of way it was, because I remember when I first got my first CD burner, I would go to friends of mine's houses and I would raid their music collection, and I would grab like bags and bags of CDs. They knew that I was good with, borrowing stuff. I always brought it back, and I would bring it back home and I would upload it and I would rip it right away because, we had that technology. And it was just like, yes, now I can have all the music. It's kind of the same idea now that we're able to run a profiler. So basically, if you've got a decent profiler, you kind of hope that you got a lot of friends with some nice tube amps.
What is this thing? You can actually take your amp with you in a digital unit? That's crazy. Now on the other end with modelers, you're given a few more strict parameters, but you're also able to just plug in and play. And usually modeled after a specific amp, they're usually very good at emulating that specific sound. And even nowadays, in seeing that there are a lot of analog amp modeler options. And then of course you have the actual amps. And I don't think I need to explain that much about that to anyone. It's a guitar amp. It's a Princeton. It sounds quite good on anything. So I decided it would be a good time to take kind of those different options to the test, like to see what would be the pros and cons and what would be the actual sound differences in profiling versus modeling versus an actual amp, and how would those work for the different players nowadays? Because I really do think that's going to be the biggest question for a lot of people to answer.
Yeah, for myself, it all depends on your situation. Every situation is unique. It depends on your particular situation. For an example, your average bar musician that plays at clubs around the area that I live in. Now, it's a lot of smaller pubs and restaurants. A lot of the big clubs have full PA, but there's only a couple of them that have PA that's adequate enough that you could use a modeler or a profile for that gig, because you'd be relying off of the PA system to be able to run your entire sound. Now, a lot of the kind of clubs that you'd play around as a working musician, like somebody like me would do around this area, a lot of the times you're playing these smaller clubs and you'd be playing with a PA that a lot of people call sound on a stick. A powered mixer with a couple 15s with horns on stands. That's not enough PA to be able to run a modeler in this situation, or a modeler or an actual profiler, either or that you'd be running, because you'd be relying on the PA to doing all the powering and all the work. Generally, in a small working club situation like I'm talking about, you'd want the PA for the most part to have vocals, maybe a tiny bit of kick drum, the littlest hair of snare drum, little bit of bass, little tiny bits of guitar, just tiny bits. For the most part, you want the guitar amps and the bass amps to fill the sound in that room for that instrument. And you're using the PA for the vocals, all, like I say, little bleeding bits. So in that scenario, a profiler or a modeler, no good. You need an extra amp to help power and fill that area of sound. Now, on the other hand, if you're playing clubs that have real PA and full PA, and you can use in-ear monitors and they can give you multiple monitor mixes, then it absolutely makes sense, more so live, I believe, to use a profiler or a modeler. You're in a lot more control of the tone. You have a lot more options. But again, I think a lot of this comes down to the production that you're using along with your gig. What size of venue, what size of PA. That's what it mainly comes down to, in my humble opinion. Is he going to make us guess? It's the Tonex of the Princeton. Wonder if that's of his Princeton. Most likely.
You see, about 4 months ago, I woke up at 6 a.m. one day randomly and drove to the airport because I wanted to see one of the 1,000 Marvel movies that came out with my friends. And I decided to go on YouTube while I'm in the airport just to see what's happening, just to kill some time. And everyone keeps posting about this unit that had just come out, and they keep labeling it the Kemper Killer.
The Kemper Killer. The Tonex, aka the Kemper Killer. I think the reason they're calling it the Kemper Killer is because it's a lot more affordable. A lot more affordable. It's also a lot smaller of a footprint. And I'm not exactly sure of the functionality of that as opposed to the Kempler. The Kempler? The Kemper.
Stuff like that. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I had just learned about profiling a couple months ago. What is this thing that everyone's talking about? The Tonex. He is our first player. We're going to be using the Princeton capture to actually see if it can keep up with the real Princeton. Our second participant, I remember Rhett Shull and Mateus Asado, two of the most respected guitarists in the YouTube community I've seen, two phenomenally talented artists. I remember seeing them go A-B with this specific unit and a classic Fender amp, and at sometimes not even be able to tell the difference. So
this is absolutely, absolutely true. Now, I remember going way back when the pod first came out, the Red Bean pod. Was that just called just the pod? I don't remember exactly, but the Red Bean. And I remember everybody raving about it at the time. It's so great. I got my home studio, my rig, I just plugged this thing. It's so great. And I remember at the time thinking and pulling no punches going, it sounds like shit. None of those tones sound good or usable to me at all. Maybe, I thought definitely none of the amp models. Now, some of the effects, the reverbs and delays and all, they were all right. But I remember the original pod, the Red Bean, just thinking, what freaking garbage. No, man, you got to have an amp. You got to have a tube amp or something that gives you an actual sound. But much like anything else, just like drum samples. I remember when drum machines first came out. They sounded horrible. But just like anything, give any new technology enough time and it'll become fantastic. Now, listen to, sometimes you have a hard time telling if it's programmed drums or if it's a real drummer. So the exact same thing, yes, I've gone through quite a few videos of the blind taste test of, can you tell the difference between an actual Plexi and the Plexi in the Line 6? This amp and this amp versus the, the amp version of the modeler? And you really can't tell. The difference is so minuscule, it's not even funny. Again, it takes time for technology to catch up.
So we got our hands on a UA Dream 65. So let's get down to brass tacks. When it comes to profiling, I have a lot of friends who've told me before, I just don't deal with it. And I think a lot of the times that's simply because of the time it would take to profile an actual amp and not just have that plug and play unit. But with this unit right here really surprised me, especially with the tonal capabilities for the price range. I chose specifically these two units because they're at the exact same price, so I wanted to monitor the tone qualities between this and the UA Dream. And I don't know how other profilers work because I'm not super knowledgeable yet, but with the software, being able to steal other people's captures, that just takes it to a whole nother level. Now with this kind of unit, like I was saying before, just having the plug and play option, just being able to plug in, I think the upside of having a unit like an amp modeler is there's never really a learning curve that comes with this. I think a lot of people, like I said, with the profiler don't want to spend the time to just getting the capture, and I think it can be great, but you do have that learning curve if you've never used a profiler before or even used a specific unit. Whereas with the UA Dream, it doesn't give you those infinite options, but what it does is it tells you we're emulating a specific amp, like I said before. And
yeah, you see, no, with what he has there, the UA Dream, that's different. That's just a modeler of one amp. But a lot of the units they got, like the Line 6 stuff, the Helix stuff, even the new Pod Go, and all those units are multi-effects units and amp modelers that have multiple amps, multiple effects. Myself, I'm a big fan of the GP200 by Valatin. They sent me one of those, and I don't love it and say it just because they sent it to me. I was a big fan of the GP100. And then once I got the GP200, just love it. Multiple amps, and you can swap out different IRs. So the one that he has is just one in particular amp, but you can get multi-effects units / amp modelers that have 50, 60 amps and 200 different effects, and almost all the multi-effects / amp modeler units have a bunch of slots that you can upload third-party IRs to. You can get all these different, IR impulse responses. An IR is an impulse response. It's a digital capture of a speaker cabinet. So that's like, swapping in and out multiple different cabinets to a unit that you already have. And that is so, you can get a multi-effects unit / modeler that has more than just one, like I do. And I absolutely love it.
We're going to do it the best.
Not making us guess, he's showing us. Okay. Now, I didn't notice a lot of difference with the tone, but it seems like there's a little bit of a difference in the noise floor when he went from the actual amp to the Dream unit, the before the Tonex. I could hear a little more hiss in the background, but I couldn't necessarily say that I heard a huge tonal shift at all. But maybe you did. Let me know in the comments below if you did hear that much of a tonal shift between the three of them. But personally myself, I didn't. Like I said, I noticed a difference in the second option, which was the modeler, the whatever 65 Dream that he had. But it seemed like I could hear more hiss. There was a little more noise floor. And I'm assuming that he's doing everything he can in his DAW and post-production to make sure that the levels are the same. So these units might have, different amounts of noise. I'm sure that they do, but that's all that I noticed myself. What about y'all? Let me know in the comments.
Just like kind of with the virtual versus analog thing, I was pretty shocked at how close the three sounded individually, especially when I would just A, B, C them and try and guess like 2 feet away from my speakers. Like the Princeton capture was really good. And when you're talking about anything specifically like this unit, like any of the big profiling units that people have, I'm very intrigued with the capabilities of using different amps in a different song. Like if you were in a live setting, would you be on rhythm on one instead of cranking a tube screamer, opting to just bring one specific unit and then using a completely different amp like a Marshall capture or something like that?
Actually, I think that's the reason most people want either a modeler or a profiler. Of course, in the live setting, doesn't matter if it's a modeler or a profiler. In a live setting, you're going to be going by whatever captures you have in your profiler, and same as you would in your modeler. I think that's the main reason that most people want one of these, to have, that option to have a Fender sound for your clean sound and then go Marshall or a Soldano for your high gain, especially if you really want to rock it out. Absolutely. There's because the way that you'd have to do that with actual rigs is you'd have to actually bring out 2 amps and have an A/B switch, and front of the house sound would have to mic up both of those amps. A lot more overhead. That's the thing about modelers and or profilers, a lot less overhead.
On the next setting to really get it cranked, it would be like almost a completely new performance or a completely new song. But let me know what differences you heard and let me know what you think, if you thought either of them got closer to the Princeton sound. But like I was saying, both units have their pros, both have their cons, depending on if you want to call them those. It just depends what's right for you. Let me know in the comments. Are you looking more to be a modeling person or a profiling person. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. It's so interesting to be able to review the two and just see like how many different tones or different styles I could possibly try and get out of them individually, especially with the profiling just being my first time ever trying it. If you liked any of the gear in this video, I got both the modeler and the profiler. You can get them both at Sweetwater. It's one of the best ways to support the channel if that's something you want to do, or if you're just curious about any of these amps or any of the gear used in this video, make sure to check out the link in the description. Also, thanks IK Multimedia, because I definitely got those Moto drums going in the backing track. Like and subscribe if you had a good time, and most important of all, have a fantastic day.
Nice. So there it is. Why guitar players start using amp modelers and stop using tube amps by Mike Cole. So again, everybody, please go and give Mike Cole a sub. Go to the original video, link in the description below, and give the original video a like. And also, please comment on this video on what you'd like to see me react to next. Thanks for checking out this video. If you like what you saw, please subscribe, click the notification bell, like, comment, and share. It doesn't cost a thing and would really help out the channel. Also, please subscribe to my other channel, GK Mac Music, for some live looping live streams with a side of jackassery, some original music, and some short content, also with a side of jackassery. If you'd like to help out the channel financially, you can buy some merch at the merch store, or you can become a channel member. As always, everyone, thanks so much for your continued support. Do what makes you happy.